Hello, welcome back to another one of my ramblings about movies. Um, Today I want to talk about the length of a movie. But first, let's talk about let's go back in time where you know I'm a huge fan of all movies of all ages. The One of my favorite movies as far as classic would be things like Ben-Hur, The Ten Commandment. I think every time it's on cable TV, I watch it these days, and those movies are 3+ hours long. Even like Cleopatra, that is an epic. Those movies was epic, and back in the 60s, 50s, when movie was made, certainly you don't have a lot of them that come out like every week like we have today. Today, you have 3 or 4 or 5 new movies every week. And back then, you know, when a new movie come out, it was epic. It was like the Super Bowl, and it would stay in a theater for months and months and months. That's one of the problem I have with today's movie, because they're churning out so many movies every week that you know they feel a need to get everyone to go see a movie the first 3 or 4 weeks, and then because there's no room. There's only so many screen. So when you have 4 or 5 new movies that come out, especially in the summer, you know most multiplex that have 10 to 12 screen can't have a movie that will sit there for a month unless it's a huge blockbuster. I think that's a damn shame. But in the old days, you have so many movies that were 3+ hours long, and I didn't mind the length of a movie. I'm one of the people that, for me, I prefer a movie to be as long as it need to be to tell me the story. It can be, if it can be done in 2 hours, so be it. But I don't want any kind of. I prefer not to have a movie cut up and slice up to shorten the movie so that it meets certain criteria of the suits in Hollywood. And that's my biggest gripe with Hollywood's since the 80s. I think they have been they try to jam a formula down the throat of the directors as well as the audience of what is the acceptable time frame to watch a movie. So when you watch movie like Ben-Hur, El Cid, Cleopatra, Gone with the Wind, those were epic. They were like a full meal. You sit there and you can just indulge in the story for 3+ hours. And I can't recall ever sitting down and watch the Ten Commandment and think that it was just so long and boring. It was fun. It was fun to watch those movies. I don't think there was anything that was wasted. Now, you move forward to the 80s, okay? When I was here and grew up in the 80s in America, it was almost a formula where almost everything that was made were between 86 minutes to like 93 minutes. It's almost as if Hollywood think that the average person attention span can only last that long for a movie. And that's partly true for some stuff. A lot of the mindless movie of the 80s, even 85 minutes was too long. But what it was by the 80s, I think Hollywood started to use accounting more in the process of making and distributing movies. Hollywood is all about how quickly they can recoup the cost. Okay, so this might be boring to a lot of people, but you gotta understand the movie making process can take, you know, sometimes months to start as far as scouting, location, casting. That can take months and months and months, you know, and get the story finished could take years, as we know. But once everything is in place, okay, once you get the storyline up, the cast done, and location scouted, the actual movie process, shooting the movie, usually for a typical movie, I'm talking about a movie that is not special effect based, okay, would take, you know, roughly 90 days. That's the average. And when you think about it, it's just like, that's it? It's almost too much if you think about it. The average movies, okay, today is say 2 hours. So can you imagine when you hear about, you know, actors and directors talking about 10 to 15 hours a day working? If they work 90 days and the movie is 2 hours long, you divide that by 90 days and you see how much usable footage is in a movie. 2 minutes? 3? Even not even that. So it's shocking of how little is accomplished on the screen when you think that they spent, you know, 15 hours a day on the set, changing, fixing, redoing the set, redoing the scene, change the angle, change the dialogue, reshoot the scene 10, 15, 20 times. It's crazy. So you can imagine the process of putting together. So if you take on average 90 days to shoot enough footage to put together a 2-hour film, okay, and then you have to wait, you know, a few more weeks or months to edit the film, to put it together so that it's done, and then test screening and all that, and then the marketing. By the time it hit the screen, it's a year later. So for Hollywood, for the beans counter out there, you know, they had to deal with outlaying, getting funding for the movie, and then had to wait sometime a year or two to recoup the cost. So Hollywood, since the 80s, in my opinion, has accelerated the need to recoup their money in movies. So they kind of push the movie harder and harder up front so that they can recoup their money and move on. You know, it's almost hurt the movies in that, you know, they don't sometimes let word of mouth spread. That is almost gone now. You know, it doesn't matter if, you know, Rotten Tomatoes think a movie stink or not. These days, when a new movie come out, they want to jam in as many screening as they can. You know, in the old days, I remember, you know, when in the 80s, when say something like Return of the Jedi came out, I don't recall going to the big multiplex and see 4 or 5 screens showing that movie at the same time. I'm pretty sure that was not the case. If anybody can remember the 80s and think that I might be wrong in this, let me know, because I recall seeing maybe 2 screens that are showing Return of the Jedi out of the 8 or 9 screen that they had at the movie theater at that time. So, but today, these days, you know, whenever you see a big blockbuster, whether it's Man of Steel or Iron Man 3 or whatever, at least in the theater I go to down here, you know, you will see 5, at least 4. You know, you get the 3D, you get the IMAX, you get it's like 5 screening of that movie out of the 10. So it basically, it goes in, it push out many other movies that not do so well as far as tickets I sold per showing. And I think that's a problem with Hollywood, is that there is such a need to jam the movie down the consumer throat as fast as possible, and then speed up the process of, you know, deliver to cable, pay-per-views, and DVDs. You know, as I mentioned before in previous videos, sometimes you have to wait a year for the DVD to come out, but now from Blockbuster to DVD is literally like 6 months. It's amazing how things has changed, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing. But let's back to the topic of length of the movie, because of the need to make as much money as possible in the first 2 or 3 weeks, Hollywood accountants, the bean counters, have brainwashed everyone, mostly executive, into thinking that, okay, if you can sell X amount of tickets per day, then this is what you need to do in order to make money or recoup your costs. And so they are geared more toward how many tickets you can sell in the first week, first weekend, first month, all that stuff. Now, the simple math is the number of tickets that can be sold is heavily dependent on the length of the movie, okay? Because if you have a movie that is, for example, 2 hours long, and on the regular weekend when you can start showing a movie at say 11 to 10 at night, you can probably fit in 6 showing, okay? From 11 to 10, 6 showing if a movie was 2 hours. So they can look at how many showing, number of seats, number of tickets, and they estimate this is how much. Now, if you look at a movie that is 3 hours long, all of a sudden, in that same time frame, you no longer can have 6 showings. You can only have 4 showings. Okay, so right there, you cut down the amount of potential ticket that can be sold in the first day, first week, first month, everything. So it freaks out the bean counters whenever they look at the length of a movie, and that bothers me because, in my opinion, if a movie is good, people will go see it. And Hollywood has proven time and time again that the length of the movie does not dictate if people will go see it, okay? And I think that's why, you know, my hats off to Kevin Costner, because up until Kevin Costner come out with Dancing with Wolves, there was a long period of time where Hollywood was scared of putting out 3-hour epic movie because, you know, oh God, you know, you put out 3 hours out there, people is going to be so bored. They just can't sit there for 3 hours and watch a movie. Wrong. He proved it. And since then, he opened the doors to a lot of other movie makers that was able to withstood the demand of the suits to keep the movie short. Because since Kevin Costner and Dancing with Wolves, you see a lot of epic movies since that are 3+ hours, you know, all the Lord of the Rings stuff that are over 3 hours, and you know, there was no problem there. And you know, I'm a big fan of movies that are long enough to tell the story. You know, I'm always bummed out to see a movie get cut short or scenes deleted for the sake of shorten the movie. You know, when I watch a DVD these days and they have a director's cut or they include cut scenes, sure, some of the time I see scenes that were cut out for good reason, but often, you know, some of the scenes are cut out because, you know, the movie was too long, or it may hurt the flow of the movie. That's the general reason that, you know, the directors will comment in the DVD. Usually those reasons are, no, it didn't interrupt the flows of the movie. It was cut off because the suit telling you they want this movie under X amount of time, in my opinion, okay? So in that, you know, these days whenever I watch movies that have a lot of flaws, I tend to feel that, you know, it's too bad, because if they could have included maybe 5 or 10 more minutes of the movie in certain area, it may have improved the movie significantly. So I think, you know, one of the things that I wish more movie makers out there would do is spend less worry about what the suits are doing and telling them to do, even though yes, they are paying the bills, so they will put the pressure on you to cut your movie into a formula so that they can somehow make money. But at the end of the day, I think, if you make a good movie, people will go see it. It has nothing to do with the length of the movie. But that's it. That's my rambling for this video about movie. Thanks for watching. Bye.